You're listening to Coming of Cage, a Nicolas Cage podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Coming of Cage podcast. I am one of your two hosts, Derek, and I've got my good old buddy Ryan here with me.
Hello.
Hello, hello. And this week we are talking about the 1984 Francis Ford Coppola movie, The Cotton Club. The Cotton Club, starring Richard Gere, Gregory Hines, Diane Lane, Bob Hoskins, Gwynne, Nicolas Cage, which is the reason we're all here, of course.
Yeah.
So what do? We talk Nicolas Cage movies, and then at the end, we rate those Nicolas Cage movies on a scale that we have, our Cage-O-meter. So what is the Cotton Club? The Cotton Club, according to IMDb, meet the jazz musicians, dancers, owner, and guests, like gangster Dutch Schultz, of the Cotton Club in 1928 to 1930s Harlem. So there you go. We watched the Encore edition of the movie, which is a 2019 restoration of the film that is longer than the original version of the movie, for better or worse. And it restores some extra musical numbers and extends some others. So that's the version of the movie we watched without really knowing it, because it doesn't tell you till the end in a special end title that is different than the opening title for some reason. So there you go. Ryan, you want to take it away like you usually do?
Yeah, I mean, it feels a little weird to be doing this our normal way because, straight out, I'm just going to say that I had trouble getting through this movie. I felt like there wasn't really any plot, so to speak, and that generally whatever plot was there was just meant as filler in between different dance numbers or performances. The performances were actually pretty good. I mean, I'm not really a big tap dancing fan, but there was a lot of tap dancing in this, and it was probably my favorite part of the movie if I had to pick one. But yeah, I mean, it just felt like whatever semblance of plot they put in there was just to make it so it wasn't just a 2-hour long dance number.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a fair way to look at it. And yeah, I agree with you. The performances are all really good. The dancing, the tap dancing, the singing, it's all very nice. It's not quite my style.
Same.
And I'm certainly in no position to critique tap dancing. It looked good. I mean, they looked like they knew what they were doing. I have no idea. I've never tried to tap dance. But yeah, I mean, I guess the general basis of the movie, for those who don't know, is Richard Gere plays Dixie Dwyer. He is a cornet player and musician. He also plays piano. And he saves the life of this man called Dutch, who's like this mob boss guy. And he's not like the top mob boss. Bob Hoskins is the top mob boss and probably the only actor who would show up and I'd get really excited because I loved Hoskins and thought he did his best. But anyway, saving Dutch's life, Dwyer kind of gets brought into this world to primarily play music, drive the guy around, take Diane Lane's character, Vera, out on dates for Dutch, which was confusing a lot of the time. I don't know, maybe that was a 1920s thing. And then eventually Dixie wants out and Bob Hoskins' character, Madden, basically takes in Dwyer, and eventually Dwyer becomes an actor in Hollywood playing a gangster, which is all somewhat based on true stories. This is all kind of loosely based on true stories. In fact, Laurence Fishburne's character was based on a real person, and Laurence Fishburne actually played that real person in another movie 13 years later. So like, it's just, I don't know. It's very strange.
And also Laurence Fishburne's basically his whole role in this movie was just like look at the camera a few times.
I mean, he does get to speak at the very end.
Right, but throughout the whole first half of the movie, literally all it does is just like fleeting shots of him not doing anything except like looking at people.
Yeah, I mean, he was a good-looking guy when he was young, and they wanted to show you that. Apparently. I think this is the youngest I've ever seen him. I'm pretty sure. Yeah. I guess Apocalypse Now was just before this, I suppose. But yeah.
Okay, well, if we're gonna do the normal route, it's probably gonna go quick because I don't know how much we have to say about a lot of these things. But my first note is cool cars. It's the 1920s. There's some cool what we would consider antique cars in there, so I appreciated that.
Yeah, I mean, some of them are gorgeous, right? It's a
Yeah.
style for sure. The 1920s is definitely a style.
This isn't in a note for me, but I'm just thinking of it. I want to tackle it early on. Is this probably because of the restoration? I don't really know, but when I was watching this, it seemed like a much newer movie than a 1984 movie. Did you
It's
have
got
that
to be,
same?
yeah, it's that restoration. And I maybe
It
it's
was
something.
weird. It was a weird phenomenon. Like I knew this was made in 1984, and like the actors' ages looked like it was 1984, but
Sure.
like and everything else didn't really line up. And maybe it was also helpful because it was a period piece, but
Yeah, I mean, right. It's meant to look like it's set
right.
in the 20s. I mean, there are times that like I did kind of forget when it was being filmed. I thought they did fit the 20s well, right? If we're going to talk about what the movie did well, I do think it hit the time period well. But the restoration did a good job.
Yeah.
It reminded me of the restoration they did for Casablanca. Like if you watch Casablanca, it looks like it was made yesterday.
It's kind of disappointing that they don't do that kind of restoration to more movies, honestly,
Yeah.
having seen that now because it was very good.
I agree.
So my next note says Altar Boy. I'm pretty sure that was a joke somebody said, but I don't really remember the context.
Yeah, Dixie says it to Vera. He makes a comment about how he was an altar boy.
Yeah.
Uh,
A young Laurence Fishburne.
yeah,
That's my next note, which we
He's in
already
there.
covered.
Right.
Dynamite attack. So in like the first act of this movie, there's a random attack where a guy just like walks up to a table and throws his lit stick
Well, no,
of
hang
dynamite
on.
under the table.
He's not just a guy. He's a cop.
I mean, I didn't even know that until just now when you said that.
Yeah. So it's this
I followed
club.
no plot of this movie.
They're in a club, not the Cotton Club. This is a different club. This is the club that Dixie works at the beginning of the movie. And he's playing cornet, not trumpet. Every time someone says trumpet, he corrects them. He's a cornet player. For those who don't know, the cornet and the trumpet are extremely similar instruments to everybody who is not a musician. So
And he also plays piano. Which
he does also play piano, and he sings a little bit.
Yeah.
Fun fact, Richard Gere actually played most of the cornet stuff himself. He actually, at least back then, I don't know if he still plays, but he could play. So he did the solos and things like that himself. But anyway, yeah, he comes after he's done playing, he comes and sits down at this table. Everyone's like kind of congratulating him and stuff. They bring some lady folk over who Diane Lane is one of those. And then these two cops come in and I'm thinking they're going to bust somebody, right? There's drugs or something, right? And instead the dude lights a stick of dynamite like he's going after the Roadrunner and throws it under the table.
Right. Like, was this a common thing in the 20s? Like, that's how you killed people? You just threw lit sticks of dynamite underneath their tables?
I can't say. I got to imagine there's a more efficient, less comical way to do it,
I
but
think so.
but that's what they did. And that's where Dixie saves Dutch's life, not knowing who Dutch is. So
it sets into motion the whole movie, basically.
Yes.
Richard Gere's mustache is my next note because it was phenomenal.
I mean, he's got a style in this movie, right? He's got those round sunglasses and the tiny, like pencil thin mustache the whole time. I mean, he looked pretty good.
Yeah, most of the guys had pencil thin mustaches, including our Lord and Savior Nick Cage. He has a pretty wonderful mustache, along with what's going on the top of his head. It was all delightful. But we'll get to that. So this I'm not sure if it's a legit note or not, but it seemed like the ADR was really bad in this. And now some of that could have been attributed to the way I viewed it, because I streamed it from my laptop to the TV, and maybe there was just a weird delay there, but I haven't had that with other movies. Did you notice any weird ADR, like stuff wasn't quite lined up?
I did not.
Okay.
I watched it directly through the Plex app on my Xbox, and it had a bunch of commercials. So I didn't notice any audio.
Okay, so that must have been an issue with me. So we can take one scratch away. I noticed a lot with the cornet scenes, a lot, but then also there were some dialogue scenes where I thought it was really weird. But again, it definitely could have been me.
I mean, the mixing was definitely bad. Like I had to have it pretty blaring to hear the dialogue. And then the music was fairly loud, and then the commercials were blaring. So it was definitely not, the mixing wasn't what I would have liked it to be, especially now knowing that it's a 2019 restoration. Yeah. I think considering how good the movie looks, they could have done more with the sound.
Yeah, that's true. So next up, I have this is the quietest Nick Cage intro ever because it's just like another scene where he's just like walking in the street with Dixie Normus or whatever the guy's name was,
Dixie
and
Dwyer.
yeah, that guy, and they're just like walking through the street, and that's it. No, it's like no caginess, no nothing. It was you couldn't even tell it was him really because you never really see his face in that scene. You just kind of hear the voice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wasn't sure it was him at first until the following scene when he really shows back up and he's dating what's her
Jennifer
name?
Grey,
Yeah, Jennifer
apparently.
Grey. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a fun surprise.
Dirty Dancing fame.
And this, I think, was before Dirty Dancing by a few years.
I
But
mean, that's fair. That's fair.
then this says Richard Gere kiss on the lips. I'm pretty sure Nick Cage kisses him on the lips.
Yeah,
That happens a few times.
That's kind of more of a Northeastern thing.
I guess it was just weird. But
Like
hey,
my parents' generation did that.
right, like my family comes from the Northeast, and that's not something that my family does. I don't.
You guys are from
anybody.
Maine. That's like Canada.
In Vermont.
That's like rich Canada.
Okay, whatever.
I'm talking
yeah.
like Philly, New York, like where these guys are from. Like my mom's from the Bronx, you know.
So then we get like this serious conversation that Richard Gere's character is having with, I think, his mom, or not his mom.
Yes.
It's somebody. Is it his mom?
That's his
And
mom.
Nick Cage is like fucking his fiance in the background, like quite loudly. And then you get a quick visual of it.
Did they get married or were they just engaged to be married?
I think they're just engaged at I don't know.
Yeah, that was weird because like now it's 1920s, right? So it's not like she's walking around in what, you know, modern lingerie would look like, right?
Right.
But she's not fully dressed for 1920s, you know, standards for Dwyer's mother. And so he's making those types of comments, but then, yeah, they go to the next room over in this tiny little apartment and they're just having sex on the other side of the wall while Dwyer and his mom are just like talking business.
And it's just like, I don't even think it's like an actual wall because you can like see their shadows and stuff. I don't know. It was weird.
It was very weird.
So then we get like a quick glimpse of the actual sex. So that's the first Nick Cage sex scene in this movie. I feel like we should have like what's our podcast called again?
Coming of Cage.
We'd have like Coming of Cage like breakdown of all the like which movies have how many sex scenes we've seen from Nick Cage in them in these movies, how many times he's died in the end of the movies, things like that, because there's shirtless scenes. I'm pretty sure it would be literally every movie we've watched so far.
Well, here, I'll make you a deal. We can do that if you go back and rewatch the first 13 movies.
No, you have a better memory for all of them than I do. Okay. Then casual stalking is my next note. I think that was Richard Gere's character, maybe with the woman that he likes. I can't remember exactly.
Stalking.
Yeah.
That doesn't ring a bell. Because so the first night with Vera, she's like, you know, hammered and he brings her back to her place. She asks him to stay. He helps her get like relatively undressed, but it's not like he leaves, like he tucks her into bed and then he sleeps on her weird couch thingy. I'm sure there's a name for what that furniture is called. And then that's
like
it.
A therapist couch is what it looks like.
Well, but it's like wavy, like he can't get comfortable. It's actually pretty funny watching him try and get comfortable on this couch. I don't know if that was improvised or not, but
I don't remember what the casual stalking was, but somebody like just is waiting outside for some other character and
Gregory Hines. Is that who you're talking about? Yeah, because he can't. This movie, one of the things that really bothered me in this is like, it is the 1920s. And I do understand that. And I do understand that we're dealing with mobs and Harlem and things like that. But this movie is racist and anti-Semitic as hell. And that was really difficult to watch. And so the Cotton Club is they call it a jazz club. I mean, I'm not an expert enough to say if that's accurate, but they do more than jazz there from what I could tell. But all of the performers are Black people from what I could gather. And the difference there is the wait staff are Black people, the valet, and you can't, but they're not allowed to be patrons, customers, right? They can't go there and eat and drink.
I think I have that as a note later on, but yeah.
Yeah. And so Gregory Hines, Sandman is his character's name. He is, which by the way, I guess Richard Pryor was supposed to have the role, but they couldn't afford him. But so Sandman is trying to talk to this lady that he likes, Lila Rose, played by Lynette McKee, and he's not allowed inside. So the valet has to like give a message, essentially. And that relationship throughout the whole movie is extremely awkward because most of the time she is not interested. Yeah. She is not into him. She's focused on her work. She's brushing him off very nicely, very politely, but he's not getting it. And then they end up like married at the end of the movie. I don't know. That was very odd.
Yeah. Yeah. My next note was anti-Semitic remark.
So many, man.
Yeah, there's a lot.
And like, look, people who listen to the show, like I'm Jewish, so I'm a little more sensitive to those things, but this movie is racist as hell. Like they really steer into all of the derogatory slang terms used for various groups of people throughout the whole movie. And I mean, it's what gets one of the guys killed.
Yeah.
I forget the guy's name. But Dutch kills a dude at this little party after the guy says something anti-Semitic, but they've all been racist and anti-Semitic. So I'm not exactly sure why this set Dutch off specifically, but it did. And he kills a guy in a really poorly done murder scene.
Yeah. My next note is Bob Hoskins, Mob Lord.
He's great.
Yeah, he's great. I mean, he's always great though, so that's nothing super surprising.
No, it's just like, he was my favorite part of the movie. I felt like he really enveloped the role that he was given because he is like the top level mob boss. Basically, the other mobs only exist because he mentored their leaders at some point.
Right.
And his number 2 is Fred Gwynne, who that's Herman Munster for those who may not know. So big, giant, he's like 6'5" guy. And the two of them, this juxtaposition of Bob Hoskins, who's like maybe as tall as me. He's like 5'6", 5'7", maybe even less. I don't really know. And then the 6'5" Fred Gwynne. It was fun. I like the two of them. They were my favorite part of the movie.
Yeah, they have a really good scene later on in the movie. My next one is the creepy tongue thing that I don't remember who does it. Maybe Dutch. So I don't know. They were talking about like how there's like the best pussy in the world is at this club or something like that, and he like does this weird thing where he sticks out his tongue and like shakes it side to side, and it's just really nasty. And I feel like uncomfortable. I don't know. Maybe.
Well, yeah, I think it's also worth noting that on top of all the racism and anti-Semitism is a shit ton of sexism, and misogyny and bad stuff there. Like, I know I'm jumping around a little bit, but like the dance scene where Dwyer takes Vera out dancing and they go on the dance floor and he's dancing with her really rough, he's mad about it, right? He's being mean. And then she slaps him because he's being an ass. And then he slaps her back and everybody around just thinks it's part of like their dance routine. And so some of the other people in the background, I guess you could call them extras, are like mimicking the slapping dance, heavy, air quotes on that. And it's really uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's a weird scene. Then we get the murder out of nowhere.
Right.
Yeah. You already brought up the dude Dutch stabbing the other dude.
Stabs the dude through like the bottom of his mouth or whatever, right?
Under like some party thing. I don't really know what was going on there, but
yeah, blood everywhere. Well, so what that was, so we're there because Dixie's going to play piano and Vera's going to sing. And Bob Hoskins' character, Madden, is trying to get, I guess, the other two mob groups, which Dutch controls one, and then the soon-to-be dead guy controls the other. He's trying to get the two of them to like put their issues aside and get on the same page because they're drawing too much attention to Harlem.
Yeah.
And it's not good for business. Right. So Hoskins, of course, he's a bad guy. He's a gangster. He's a mob boss, but he's a businessman and he doesn't want the infighting. That's
just
what
because he's a bad guy doesn't mean he's a bad guy. I mean,
that's right.
He's at least the one we can count on throughout the whole movie to be that character. You know what I mean? Like he has the same character throughout the movie. He doesn't like get meaner, get nicer throughout the movie. You pretty much know what you're getting with him throughout everything, which is kind of nice.
Yes.
Women as property is my next note.
Because
somebody says something about she belongs to me or something like that. And
yeah, so Dutch basically quote unquote owns her in this context. So he's paying for her in some capacity or has, manipulated and or threatened her in some capacity where she is not under her own free will to leave that situation.
Yeah.
But supposedly there's some connection between her and Dixie Dwyer, even though they seemingly dislike each other most of the time too.
Yeah, which is funny because that's also what we ran into in the last movie, where Nick Cage's character really did not seem to have any. The woman just seemed to hate him completely, and we were supposed to believe that this was a romance.
Yeah, it's very awkward.
Tom Waits looks like a young Ron Perlman. Was my next note.
I must have missed that.
No, he just like, I don't know. In this movie, he just looked like Ron Perlman to me.
Okay.
Nick Cage N-word is the next note.
Yep.
Not my proudest moment as a Nick Cage fan.
No.
I mean, it's what lots of good actors have used that word in a movie for, whatever. And at this point, he was trying to get roles. I mean, and it was a Francis Ford Coppola movie, so
I know.
And that's his uncle, so he's trying to do right.
Yeah, I mean, not good. It's not good. The whole thing, like, there's just so much racism in this movie.
Then they name drop Duke Ellington at one point in this, and that he plays there, and that kind of, as a former jazz band member in high school, I was seeing a lot of names in this, mostly in the credits when I was going through all the artists and everything that did these songs. It was kind of like a trip down memory lane of all these artists that I'd done music of before. And Duke Ellington, him being there and being a regular performer there, that's an easy way to tell the audience that this is a very high end place, that they will pay money if you hadn't already gotten that,
Right. Yeah.
That was
because that's what it's supposed to be, right? This is supposed to be like the place.
Yeah. The jazz club
to go. And, that's interesting. I was in jazz band as well. I guess I didn't study.
We were a different jazz band, so maybe my teacher was more of a fan of that type of music and dug into the classics a bit more.
For those listening at home, what'd you play?
Trumpet.
Yeah, or cornet.
Or cornet. I mean, they play the same way. It's just a different shape.
Well, my little brother played the cornet, and I always kind of thought that as well, but I'm not an expert, so I'm sure somebody out there is a cornet player who doesn't like people saying it sounds like it's the same as a trumpet.
That's one of our 4 listeners, and they're just now quitting listening to us. So now we're down to 3 again.
I just to throw this out there, I played the baritone in jazz band. I got to imagine that's a small group of people who have done that.
Yeah, because it's not really generally a jazz instrument.
Not usually, no.
Delightful tap dancing performances, which we already kind of covered. I'm not that big of a tap dancing fan. It's not really my thing, but it is really fun to watch people that are really good at what they're doing. Mm-hmm. And, Gregory Hines was very good in this.
Yes.
And one thing I did like about all the performances in this, and that it would have been handled differently if it was a modern movie, was that they showed the whole performer doing the dance. It wasn't like a cut from the shoes up to the upper torso real quick, so that you could so that it looked like this guy was doing the dance, but he wasn't actually. There was a couple shots like that, but most of the time it was you're seeing the performer doing the dance, and they can't really fake it.
No, you're right. There was a lot of that because they're trying to show the set pieces, or it's an ensemble group a lot of the time. Yeah. So they do have to do these wide shots.
They do these tap dancing things on a staircase thing, which was really
so
cool
at the end. Yeah, that was really neat. The only knock I have against that is this isn't a musical. So it's a movie where they go to places where people dance and do music stuff. So I found it a little odd that all of the tap dancers just wear tap shoes all the time.
I have that in a note in here. Yeah.
Right. Versus if it's actually a musical, then there's some suspension of disbelief because they're going to break out in song at any random time. But this isn't a musical, so that doesn't really work for me.
Right.
But otherwise, wonderful performances.
There's there's this scene. My next note is my next note is features black performers but can't be patrons, which we've already kind of covered. Then there's a scene where I think it was Gregory Hines, Sandman, was singing to a woman. Was it him that was singing to a woman about the 3 things he likes about her or whatever? You remember that?
I don't remember that.
One of them that she was tan. I can't remember. He sings a song about the 3 words he would use to describe this woman.
I would say probably then, because this becomes a plot point later that Lynette McKee, and this is the phrase they use in the movie, is quote, white passing, right? So she's fair skinned, and we find out later in the hotel scene that I may have this flipped, that her father is black and her mother is white. And so that, she might, use that to her advantage in the times to go to places that wouldn't normally allow black people to go in the 1920s. And that's a plot point later in the movie. So I assume then that was Sandman singing the song because that's who wants to get with her throughout the film.
Yeah, I just thought it was interesting that he used the word tan as one of the three words that he would describe her with, because that is not like one that immediately pops into my head.
Yeah.
But anyway, tap dance battle.
Yeah, that was cool.
There's several tap dance battles.
I didn't think that's where that scene was going to go, because it's like a men's club kind of thing, not like in the sense of like a strip club, but it's like just like guys go here and play, chess and things like that, or cards and whatever. And this old dude gets up like he's going to like kick them out or something like that. And then he starts tap dancing, and it's this great scene.
Yeah. And they're all wearing tap shoes, of course, including the woman that's wearing like heels.
Yeah.
Very aggressive dancing is my next note, which I think is the scene with Richard Gere when he's being a giant jerk and like slapping women. And
it's an awful scene because like they start the dance, they're sitting at a table, she's unhappy, he's unhappy, and then he says something about how it feels like he's walking the dog or whatever, which is just deeply insulting. And then it's just bad.
And Richard Gere is an asshole is my next note. Not the actual actor, but his character.
Dixie
maybe
Dwyer.
He may be an asshole in real life. I don't really know. I've never met him, but in the movie, he was an asshole for sure. Then we get this scene where I'm pretty sure it's Diane Lane's character is doing like eye makeup on her eyes that looks like open eyes, and then she opens her eyes. I feel like there's several things in this movie that I feel like is supposed to be symbolism for something that I am just too dumb to figure out, I think. Because there had to be some point to that.
It was weird. If it makes you feel any better, I didn't really gain anything from it. It was just odd.
Like, what was the point of having that in there? There had to be some reason that they decided, because it's not like they show that ever again. It's like a 2-second thing, and it's never referenced again. So I don't know.
I guess the only thing maybe that was useful for is it's a scene where Dixie and Vera are like getting along. So this is them building their relationship, even though they've disliked each other the entire time. And he was just
sitting there watching her do this eye makeup on top of her eyes and be like, okay, I'm just going to watch.
I guess.
It was
the 1920s. Weird. What else are they going to do?
That's true. Have sex, probably. Tap dancing drama. I don't even remember what that particular drama was, but there was a lot of tap dancing drama in this movie.
Well, so Sandman's big thing is that he and his brother have a duo show that they do together, and they got into the Cotton Club, and that was like this big dream of theirs. And then Sandman wants to, hit it out on his own. He gets to do like a solo, and he doesn't tell his brother about it. So his brother quits. So that's kind of a sad moment. It does come back later where they have this great kind of tap dance makeup performance. That's really nice. But
if you've been listening to this podcast so far and going, okay, what's the plot though?
The plot
exactly what I'm thinking too, because at this point in the movie, I'm pretty sure one of my upcoming notes is I still don't know what the plot of this movie is. And this is like an hour and 15 minutes or an hour and 30 minutes in.
The problem is there's two movies happening here. You've got the Dixie Dwyer movie, where this is a guy who's been brought into this mob world and he doesn't want to be there, but he's fallen for this woman who's bought and paid for by this mob boss. And then you've got the Sandman movie, where you've got this performer who's got a thing for this lady and she's not really that interested in him, but he's going to pursue her. Those are the two movies that they put into one film here.
Yeah, but there's not really a lot of plot for either of those storylines in this movie.
Not much.
That's what I like. There's just so much dancing. And part of that is our fault for watching the specific cut we did. Because going back and looking at the IMDb, it says that they put 3 extra dance numbers in there and fleshed out other ones. So I feel like maybe it would be more obvious what the plot was, or maybe that it would be more concise if we watched the original theatrical version. But that's on us. Also, right now, a lot of these older, more obscure Nick Cage movies are kind of hard to find any version of.
That's true.
So we kind of just have to go with whatever we get. So, in this case, it ended up being the much longer and more sleep-inducing version.
Supposedly, there's a 3-hour cut
Good
that
Lord.
does exist but was never like released that way. So
No thanks.
even more tap dancing.
I'll watch the Snyder cut instead. And then we get Nick Cage with a Tommy gun, which was delightful. You
Hmm.
know, just that visual.
Yeah. Yeah. He looks good with the Tommy gun.
I agree.
Is that
Yeah,
the scene in the street where they try and mow down that guy?
I think so. Yeah.
That scene drove me nuts. So look, I'm not a gun guy. I certainly don't know much about Tommy guns other than they fit well in violin cases. Um, but they roll up in a car to kill this one like older guy. He's not old, but older guy who's just walking by himself down the street. And these dudes unload like 3 barrels into this side of the street and they barely get the guy. They do
Okay.
manage to like kill a couple of kids in the process.
So as a guy that does know a little bit more about guns, Tommy guns were notoriously heavy and inaccurate. And as I understand it, back in those days, they were like not really effective weapons of murder, more just like damage causing and like intimidating than they were anything else. I mean, when you see those big like drums on them, those things are very heavy. I mean, and unwieldy. So yeah, it was a weird scene. I'm not trying to like excuse the way it was shot or anything, but yeah, it was a little weird they couldn't hit this guy. But they weren't notoriously accurate firearms. So,
I mean, I guess that does help a little bit because
Yeah.
I found it silly. Like this dude's just like he's screwing around with an umbrella that he can't get to work right. And he's just nonchalantly walking down the street. And, like these 3 gangsters in a car who are all armed can't seem to take this dude down.
Yeah, he like almost gets away.
Right. So I was like, that is weird. But they do
Yeah.
kill a couple of kids, and everyone thinks that it's Nick Cage who killed the kids because it was like his boys, who are doing the work, but he wasn't in the car.
Another random murder was my next note. So this is like what, the second murder of the movie, and they were like an hour apart.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Then we get moist Nick Cage in the rain again, which we always like.
Yeah, that
here
seems
on
to
the
happen
show.
more often than I thought it would.
Right? I mean, that's why I make note of it every time, because these are things that I feel like we should be tracking. More murder, because then we have some more killing shortly after that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Then Nick Cage kidnaps a dude, the partner of Bob Hoskins, I think.
Yeah, so he kidnaps Frenchie. That's Fred Gwynne's character, Frenchie. Like, you're in Harlem, you're going to kidnap the biggest guy you can find. Just seems
Well,
like
he
an
doesn't
odd
even
choice.
he doesn't even put up a fight. He just goes with them. I mean,
Yeah.
they got guns on him, so I get it, but
He's clearly got like
he
a
doesn't
level
seem
head, but
he doesn't seem panicked or anything like that at all.
not even remotely.
It's like he knew Bob Hoskins would pull through for him.
right.
The actor, not the character.
The actor.
Then we get another shirtless Nick Cage scene, which seems to happen in every single one of these movies, where he's just wearing suspenders and pants.
Yeah, that's a look, man. That's a 1920s look right there. So
The
yeah,
whole
so
movie, I was like, are we going to get like, because we had the sex scene earlier,
yeah,
but you didn't really get a shirtless Nick Cage. You just saw a little bit of his back. And so I was like, so are we going to get a legit shirtless Nick Cage? Because this is probably 2 hours into the movie or close to it.
but we
And
did.
then finally we get it.
Well, because what happens here at this point, Dixie Dwyer is now working for Madden, Bob Hoskins' character, and
Yeah,
his
this is
brother,
years after the start of the movie.
right? Yeah, well, right. So like that's another thing too. The way they handle time in this movie. So the movie just starts and you assume it's the 1920s because that's what it looks like. But then all of a sudden, like over an hour into the movie, they flash up on the screen 1929. And then you have the recession, supposedly. Right. They're unaffected by it, seemingly.
Right. It's not a plot point at all.
And then they show it's 1930. Like that's up on the screen. I'm like, wait a minute. So now they're going to tell me when things are taking place. You didn't do that for the first half of the movie.
Right.
So I assume the rest of the movie is 1928. That's what IMDb says. I don't know. But anyway, so Nick Cage, he's Vincent Dwyer. He is Dixie Dwyer's brother.
Yeah.
And so Madden wants Dixie to go get Frenchie from Vincent. And so Dixie's going to go in and Vincent's got all these guys, right, with guns, and they're holed up in this tiny little apartment room somewhere. And Frenchie's in the next room over. And they haven't
They're
touched
basically
them.
hiding out because Nick Cage's character has been accused of killing kids.
Right. He's the baby killer now.
Yeah.
And like everything goes really smoothly with this handoff. Like it's $50,000. He's paid. He's good. Frenchie's leaving. And Vincent's like, you're going to tell him like we treated you good, right? We didn't hurt you. And then for no fucking reason at all, Vincent slices Frenchie's ear with a blade.
Yeah, that was my next. Well, first before that, I have anti-Semitic Nick Cage because he makes a comment. Then he just like randomly slices his ear. I don't really know why. It's not really explained why he does that. He just like, because he was shaving. He has shaving cream on his face and stuff like that when he gets into when Richard Gere's character comes into the room.
Right.
And so he has the straight razor on him. And so, yeah, right before the dude's about to leave, he just like reaches the razor up and like does a quick slice across the ear. And so my next note was, did he just cut that guy's ear?
And then yes, because you do see it later.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know what that was about. It doesn't seem to really go anywhere, but
yeah. And then we get probably the best scene of the movie, which is the watch scene with Bob Hoskins' character and the dude that just got rescued from being kidnapped. Yeah, Frenchie. Really delightful scene. Good banter between the two of them.
Yeah, it's so good because basically, they're kind of talking like everything's kind of good. Frenchie's back. He's doing okay. His ear's bleeding, but they were playing tennis. Vincent and him were playing tennis. They were treating him really well. And, then Frenchie takes the watch. He's like looking at the watch, see what time it is. And then he destroys the watch and just gets angry and powerful on Hoskins. And like, keep in mind, there's like a 1.5 foot height difference at least between these two guys.
Right.
He starts yelling, like, how could you, only, give $500 for me, and all this other stuff. And then, Bob's like, it was $50,000. And they have this just really powerful moment. And then Frenchie pulls out a gift. And it's another pocket watch, but like a nicer one.
Yeah, platinum.
It's so cute. It's just great. It's great seeing those two guys. That was a great scene. That was the best part of the movie right there.
For sure. I can't say it's worth it to watch the whole movie just to get to that scene, but yes, that was a highlight.
Maybe there's a Bob Hoskins supercut out there.
Then we get the Nick Cage murder where he dies.
In a candy store.
Die at the end of all of his movies, basically.
Yeah, they're sticking up a candy store. Now, so Vincent's thing is like he wants to be like a big mobster, hotshot kind of guy, right? And so now he's I don't know, going to a candy store to rob a freaking candy store in 1930. And he goes to answer the phone. They've got like these private little phone booths, and he steps into one and just gets blown away. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, he gets destroyed. Then there's the tap showdown,
right?
Which is great. Again, but it's like the 6th full-length tap performance we've gotten in the movie at this point.
Right.
So then some shit happens that I don't really care about, and one dude pulls the gun on Richard Gere's character. Dutch or whatever his name is pulls the gun on Dixie. Well, he does it so slow that the performer Sandman has time to run across the entire club and then do like some karate kick out of nowhere to knock this gun out of the guy's hand when there's been no evidence in here at all that Sandman has some kind of skill to do that.
No, we just know that he and Dixie are friends. That's it. Yeah. So Ryan, if anyone ever pulls a gun on me, I need you to crane kick the gun,
run across the whole room. Well, they have to do it really slowly. That's the trick. But really take their time and relish the moment of getting ready to shoot you.
What's really wild though is like right before this, they introduced a brand new character. We are like 2 hours.
Okay, so when we were watching that, I was like, "Are we supposed to know who this guy is?" It keeps flashing to this guy.
He is brand new. He is this brand new dude who I guess is going to run the mob for Hoskins after Hoskins goes back to jail. So like, I thought maybe he's a cop or maybe he's the Fed. Like it was very unclear who this dude was for a while.
Yeah.
And then this whole thing with Dutch happens because Dutch figures out that Dixie and Vera are kind of like a thing because even though they've hated each other for 2 hours, they're in love.
Right.
And they're going to run away together.
Then there's some more murder. With like the most slow dramatic death of probably any of the Nick Cage movies we've watched so far.
Well, yeah. So those cops show back up. So basically Dutch and his boys get held up in some bar somewhere. And then the two cops from the beginning of the movie show back up. Dutch is in the bathroom, which is very convenient for the scene. The cops shoot the three dudes like square, like right in their faces. Clearly these guys, know how to handle a gun. And then they go in the bathroom and they shoot Dutch like 3-4 times and dude takes forever to die.
Yeah. It was ridiculous.
Oh, it's
very dramatic.
Very, very.
Then we get these like weird mixed scenes that I can't quite figure out exactly what was happening. Like there's a marriage between Sandman and the woman he's been lusting after the whole movie.
Well, yeah, so like some of it's the performance,
like
but some of it's real, right? Some of it's actually happening, but they're performing at like the train station, which is also where Hoskins is going to go back to jail, but it's also the stage back at the Cotton Club. That felt like it belonged in a musical.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I could definitely say that. Yeah, I could 100% see that in a musical. It was definitely reminiscent of that, but it wasn't. So,
but it's not a musical. So
and then there's my note, which you touched on earlier, saying that everyone wears tap shoes everywhere because there's like random people tap dancing in like a subway.
Right. So like there's this girl
train station.
There's this girl, I don't know her age, 12, 14 maybe, who's tap dancing. Yeah, and Dixie's mother sees it, and apparently she's
an expert tap dancer with tap shoes on at that very moment.
At the train station, so she's going to teach this girl how to move her arms differently to tap dance.
Yeah. And then like it randomly shows this performance like ending, and everybody's clapping, and then it shows a guy that just wakes up and starts clapping, which that guy is basically my idol because that's exactly how I felt through this whole movie. Well, Except I probably wouldn't have clapped at the end.
I think that guy is supposed to be like one of Dutch's like right-hand men, and he just like slept through the whole altercation.
Yeah. Yeah. That's literally all my notes. We've basically covered the whole movie.
You had nothing to say about the train scene?
No.
Oh man, it's like right out of a play. So like Dwyer and Vera go off to Hollywood because like we skipped the whole part where Dixie becomes an actor. He goes to Hollywood and actually gets cast in a movie to play a mobster, gangster.
Which pisses Dutch off, yeah. And then
which pisses off Dutch. Yeah. And so they're going to run away together back to Hollywood, and they get on the train and they're on the back of the train as it's pulling away, and they can kiss on the back of the train as the movie fades out to credits and whatever. After she says she's not going to go with him.
Right.
Right. Then she's just there with all of her luggage, even though he's treated her like shit for the entire movie.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, I don't really have much else to say about this movie. I knew this was going to be a short podcast because neither of us really felt like there was a lot to discuss about this.
Well, Nick is barely in it, right? In the first hour, he has like 2 minutes of screen time, and then he finally gets a little bit to do in the second half of the movie. Right. Then he's killed, and then we still have like, I don't know, like 20 minutes.
Yeah, this is just not a movie that is in our wheelhouse.
No.
So.
And to make matters worse, like watching it on Plex meant that it had a lot of commercials, and every commercial break was 3 minutes. And so this movie, like it took me over 3 hours to watch this movie.
Yeah. No, I had to do it over 2 nights because it was so much of a slog. I was falling asleep.
I mean, like I never text you like during these movies, right? I want to save everything for the show. And even I had to text you. I'm like, dude, I'm an hour in and he's been in this for 2 minutes. Like,
yeah.
I just kept checking how much time was left. And I felt like its time had stood still and the movie was never going to end. It was just.
Yeah. Even when I had 40 minutes to watch on the second night, I was still like, oh my God, this is still so brutal to watch.
Yeah. This was one of the hardest movies we've had to watch for a podcast, I have to say.
So what do? We rate this movie.
Yeah, we rate it. Yeah. So let's talk about that. So we have our Cage-O-meter. So for those who don't know, Cage-O-meter, we rate it on 2 different things, quality and caginess, both out of 20. So 20 being the greatest movie ever with the most caginess ever, or 1 being the worst movie ever and no caginess. So Ryan, let's start with quality here. How would you rate the overall quality of this movie?
And I know I say it's tough every week, but like this wasn't like a bad movie. I feel like for the right person, this was right up their wheelhouse, but for me, this was not. So, I mean, it's probably going to be lower than it should be. I don't know. I'm feeling like an 8 maybe on this one.
I was going to give it an 8.
Okay, well then I guess we're dead on with it.
Because like, look, the performers are wonderful. right?
Yeah.
The tap dancers, the musicians, the singers, these are all professionals. They know their stuff and they nail those scenes. But it's not a musical, and there's just a ton of that stuff that doesn't have a lot of context wrapped around it. And the rest of the movie just really falls flat with the exception of that one scene we talked about between Fred and Bob. Just the rest of it, it's so light on everything else. So I'm with you. 8.
Okay, well, that was easy then. No discussion needed.
Now, the caginess is hard because he's barely in the freaking movie.
He has like one cagey scene.
Right? So like,
do you remember the scene I'm talking about? When he's like got his head hidden and then he like pops out like a snake and with a gun on this guy when he's I think it's when he's kidnapping the guy.
Yeah, it's when he's kidnapping Fred. They're out on like, it's kind of like in an alley.
Yeah, that was like the only cagey scene. So this is going to be low on the cage meter for me. Where are you going to put it, Derek?
Well, I'm looking at some of our data just to kind of see like where we're at on some things. And, you know, I think I'm going to give it a 2.
Yeah.
On caginess.
I was thinking a 4. So maybe, you know, so I think that's settling as a 3.
Yeah. Okay.
Because when I think of the movies that were really not cagey, it was more cagey than those movies, but not a lot.
That's fair. I put it on the same level as Rage.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. Because I think that one had like one cagey scene too.
Right. It's hard when he's just not in it a lot because he's not given a lot of opportunity to be kind of out there. Right. But there you go. So an 8 out of 20 on quality and a 3 out of 20 on caginess for that. If you want to know like some cool behind the scenes stuff, like there's a million things to read about this movie, tons of production issues. Sylvester Stallone was attached to it. And then it turned out one of the producers was having an affair with Stallone's girlfriend at the time. So he quit. Pacino was supposed to be in the movie, but he turned it down before Coppola was involved. Like there's just some really interesting. Bob Hoskins got the call from Coppola and thought it was some dude messing with him and hung up on Coppola. Like there's some really cool stuff if you're interested about the production side of things. Yeah. Frankly, I'm more interested in those types of things. If that tells you anything. So that's it. That's the Cotton Club. The last thing we have to do is, so each episode we pick our next movie based on our Wheel o' Cage, which has 18 Nicolas Cage movies on it. You can go to comingofcage.com or follow us at Coming of Cage to find out what movie we will, be talking about next when we spin that wheel a week from now. But we do have to decide what movie goes on the wheel to replace the Cotton Club. So the movie that will be joining the other 17 is Racing with the Moon. Racing with the Moon is going to join our Wheel o' Cage. So that is a possible movie to come up next when we spin the Wheel o' Cage next week. So that's it. That's us. We're the Coming of Cage podcast, comingofcage.com. You can find all of our social media stuff there. Ryan, anything else on the Cotton Club?
No, I'm really good.
You're really good. All right.
Yeah.
Well, then that's it for us. Thank you so much for tuning in. Let us know your thoughts on the movie, and we will catch you next time. Meet the music. Let's try it again.